21 men faced 10,000 warriors on September 12, 1897. By sunset, every single one of those 21 soldiers would be dead. But before they fell, they would kill or wound nearly 1,000 enemies. They would fight for 7 hours straight. They would send real-time battle reports even as their walls crumbled. And they would create a legend that would make the British Parliament stand in silence. Something they'd done only twice before in history for a foreign army. This is the story of Saragarhi, a name most people have never heard, a battle that military academies still study. 21 Sikh soldiers who chose certain death over surrender, who fought until their ammunition ran out, then fought with bayonets, then fought with their bare hands. The mathematics were simple and brutal. 476 enemies for every defender. Yet somehow, impossibly, those 21 men held their tiny fort for 7 hours against an ocean of attackers. 3 questions haunt military historians to this day. Why didn't they retreat when they had the chance? How did 21 men inflict casualties that would make a full battalion proud? And what drove Sepoy Gurmukh Singh to keep transmitting battle reports even as enemies battered down his door, even as he became the last man alive? Picture the year 1897. The British Raj controls India with an iron fist, but that control has limits. Sharp, deadly limits drawn in the mountain passes of the northwest frontier. This isn't the India of palaces and maharajas. This is the Wild West of the British Empire, where Afghan tribes raid across poorly defined borders, where blood feuds span generations, where every mountain pass hides potential ambush. The northwest frontier, modern-day Pakistan and Afghanistan border region, was the empire's perpetual headache. Afghan Pashtun tribes, fiercely independent, deeply martial, refused to accept British rule. The British response was a chain of forts and outposts, tiny islands of imperial control in an ocean of hostile territory. The 36th Sikh Regiment held the thin red line. These weren't British soldiers. These were professional warriors from Punjab, Sikhs who'd earned their reputation fighting across decades of frontier warfare. The Samana Range represented the choke point. 2 major forts anchored British control. Fort Lockhart perched on high ground with several hundred men. Fort Gulistan miles away, equally fortified. Between them, the problem. The 2 forts couldn't see each other. Mountain terrain blocked direct visual contact. Communication meant heliograph, mirrors, and sunlight flashing Morse code across miles. But heliograph needs line of sight. Enter Saragarhi, a small stone fortification built on a rocky outcrop exactly halfway between the 2 forts. From Saragarhi's position, heliographs could see both forts. Messages flashed from one fort to Saragarhi, then from Saragarhi to the other fort. The entire communication network for the Samana Range depended on this tiny outpost. The fortification itself was nothing impressive. 50 feet by 60 feet of stone walls, barely 7 feet high. A small blockhouse for the heliograph station. A few rooms for the garrison. No artillery, no machine guns, just thick stone walls and the men manning them. Standard garrison was 21 soldiers. Not because 21 was ideal for defense, but because 21 was enough to maintain heliograph communication in shifts while providing minimal security. Think about that for a second. The British Empire's entire communication system in this critical region depended on 21 men in a fort you could walk around in less than a minute. The summer of 1897 turned hostile. Not the usual hostile of occasional raids and sniping, but something different, something organized. Tribal mullahs preached jihad in every village. Charismatic leaders united clans that normally spent more time fighting each other than fighting the British. Weapons appeared, modern rifles that shouldn't have been in tribal hands. Intelligence reports spoke of something big coming. Havildar Ishar Singh commanded Saragarhi's garrison. A Havildar was equivalent to a sergeant, experienced, respected, but not an officer. Ishar Singh was a veteran who'd survived frontier warfare long enough to earn the trust of British officers and the respect of his men. His 20 men represented a cross-section of Sikh military culture. Some were veterans like him, grizzled soldiers who'd fought across the frontier. Others were younger, still learning the craft of war. All were Sikhs. All had taken the religious vows that made them part of the Khalsa, the community of the pure. That meant something in 1897. It meant they'd sworn to defend the defenseless, to stand against injustice, to never flee from battle regardless of odds. Late August brought whispers, then rumors, then confirmed intelligence that made British commanders nervous. The Orakzai and Afridi tribes were meeting. These weren't minor clans. These were two of the most powerful Pashtun confederations on the frontier. Tens of thousands of warriors between them. When Orakzai and Afridi talked peace between themselves, it meant war against someone else. Religious leaders were calling for jihad. Not the casual raids that flared up every few years, but organized, apocalyptic holy war. The message resonated in villages that had chafed under British rule for a generation. The strategic thinking was sound from a tribal perspective. Forget attacking the major British forts directly. Those were heavily defended. Instead, attack the communication network. Cut the heliograph relay chain, and Fort Lockhart couldn't talk to Fort Gulistan, couldn't coordinate defense, couldn't call for reinforcements. Saragarhi, that tiny relay station between the forts, became the obvious target. Minimum British presence, maximum strategic value. September 12th, 1897, dawned clear and hot. The 21 men at Saragarhi went through their morning routine unaware that this would be their last dawn. Ishar Singh was probably drinking chai when the first report came in. A sentry on the wall, squinting into morning glare, pointed to dust clouds on the horizon. Not small dust trails, massive dust clouds that spoke of thousands of men moving together. Every frontier soldier knew what that meant. Attack. Ishar Singh didn't wait to find out. He ordered the heliograph crew to flash an immediate warning to Fort Lockhart. Large enemy force approaching from the southwest. The next hour brought horrifying clarity. The tribal force wasn't bypassing Saragarhi. It was heading directly toward the tiny fort. Advanced scouts appeared on ridges, small groups surveying the British position. Then came the infantry, columns of men armed with rifles and traditional weapons, banners flying, war chants drifting across the valley. Through the heliograph, Ishar Singh maintained continuous communication with Fort Lockhart. Enemy confirmed advancing on Saragarhi, numbers between 10 and 14,000. Modern historians dispute the exact numbers. Some say 10,000, others claim fewer. But even conservative estimates put tribal forces at least 6,000 to 8,000 strong. Against 21 defenders, the distinction between 10,000 and 6,000 was academic. British officers at Fort Lockhart faced an immediate crisis. They could see Saragarhi from their position. They could see the dust clouds converging on it. They could not reach it in time. The distance, the terrain, the size of the attacking force made rescue impossible. Any relief column would arrive hours too late. The orders flashed back to Saragarhi were bureaucratic and heartless. Hold position, maintain communications as long as possible. Reinforcements cannot reach you in time. Translation: you're on your own. Die well. Ishar Singh gathered his men. He gave them a choice. They could abandon the fort, try to escape through mountain paths before the enemy closed the noose. Some might survive, or they could stay and fight. To understand why they chose to stay, you need to understand Sikh military tradition. Running from battle was worse than death. Surrender was shameful. These men were professionals. They'd taken British pay, sworn oaths, accepted duty. Their religion taught that righteous death in battle guaranteed spiritual liberation. Not a single man chose to run. All 21 decided to stay and fight. Saragarhi's defenses were pitiful by military standards. Stone walls approximately 7 feet high enclosed the rectangular fort. No moat, no outer works, no artillery, no machine guns. 7-foot walls weren't going to stop determined attackers. A man could climb 7 feet with a ladder. The fort's small size meant every inch of wall had to be defended. Spread 21 men around a perimeter that measured roughly 200 feet total, and you had defenders every 10 feet. Ammunition was the critical constraint. Each soldier carried his standard load, maybe 80 to 100 rounds. The fort had reserves, but not unlimited. Do the math. 21 men, roughly 2,000 rounds total, 10,000 attackers. That's 1 bullet for every 5 enemies. The mathematical impossibility wasn't lost on any man present. This wasn't a battle they could win. This was a question of how long they could hold, how many enemies they could kill before the inevitable end. Ishar Singh's orders were methodical. Ammunition distributed to ensure every man had enough for sustained fire. Defensive positions assigned, with orders to maintain interlocking fields of fire. The heliograph crew given absolute priority. Their job was communication, not combat, until communication became impossible. The fort's interior became a hive of activity. Men reinforced weak sections of wall, stacking stones to create better firing positions. The heliograph crew tested their equipment, making sure mirrors were aligned, shutters operating smoothly. Then came the prayer. Sikhs before battle recite the Ardhas, a prayer that acknowledges God's sovereignty, asks for strength to do one's duty, and accepts whatever fate brings. 21 voices joined in the final phrases. With God's grace, may goodness come to all. By mid-morning, the tribal force had completely surrounded Saragarhi. Horsemen on the ridges, infantry filling the valley approaches, banners visible in every direction. The war cries started. Thousands of voices shouting, Allahu Akbar, screaming defiance, working themselves into battle frenzy. The psychological impact was calculated. Let the defenders see the ocean of humanity about to crash over their walls. The 21 Sikhs stood on their walls and stared back in silence. Ishar Singh ordered no one to fire yet. Ammunition was too precious. Let the enemy come. Let them get close. Make every bullet count. At approximately 9 a.m., the first assault wave charged the walls of Saragarhi. Hundreds of tribal warriors, screaming, firing, rushing toward the tiny fort. The opening volley from Saragarhi's walls was disciplined and devastating. 20 rifles firing in controlled bursts, aimed shots, no wasted ammunition. Afghan tribesmen fell in the initial rush, some dead before they hit the ground. The first wave broke against disciplined rifle fire and retreated, leaving dozens of dead scattered in front of the walls. But the second wave came immediately after. Then the third wave. The tribal commanders were applying pressure, testing defenses, looking for weak points. They could afford casualties. 21 defenders couldn't sustain this pace. Sepoy Gurmukh Singh, the designated heliograph operator, manned his post in the small blockhouse. Through his mirrors and shutters, he began transmitting real-time battle reports to Fort Lockhart. First assault repelled. Enemy casualties heavy. All garrison effectives. British officers in Fort Lockhart watched through telescopes, helpless, as the drama unfolded. The accuracy of Sikh rifle fire that morning was remarkable. These were professional soldiers who'd spent years perfecting their marksmanship. Every man on those walls could hit man-sized targets at 300 yards. But accuracy has limits against overwhelming numbers. For every attacker killed, 2 more took his place. The pile of bodies in front of the walls grew, providing cover for subsequent waves. By 10 a.m., an hour into the battle, ammunition consumption was becoming a concern. Ishar Singh ordered fire discipline tightened. Aimed shots only. Every bullet saved now was one more enemy killed later. Minor wounds began accumulating among the defenders. A bullet fragment nicking an arm. rock chips from near misses cutting faces. Wounded men tied cloth around their injuries and kept fighting. The tribal commanders adjusted their tactics. Pure frontal assault was too costly. They began probing attacks on different sections of wall, trying to divide the defenders' attention. The Sikhs responded by shifting men along the interior, reinforcing whatever section was under immediate pressure. Wave after wave crashed against Saragarhi's walls. Tribal warriors died in heaps, but their bodies became ramps. Attackers were literally climbing over their own dead to get closer to the defensive positions. Around noon, 4 hours into the battle, the defenders had inflicted horrific casualties. Conservative estimates put enemy dead at 300 to 400 already, with hundreds more wounded. But the Sikhs had also lost their first man. His name went into Gurmukh Singh's heliograph report, flashed to Fort Lockhart, entered into history. 1 down, 20 to go. By early afternoon, the tribal commanders had learned an expensive lesson. Direct assault on Saragarhi's walls was suicide. Something had to change. The new tactic was ancient and effective. Sapping, undermining. Instead of going over the walls, go through them. Tribal warriors, armed with tools and working under covering fire, began attacking the wall's foundation. The defenders couldn't stop this new threat effectively. To shoot at the sappers working at the base of the wall, they'd have to lean out over the top, exposing themselves to massed rifle fire. Ishar Singh made the brutal calculation. Better to let them work than to lose men trying to stop the inevitable. The eastern wall showed signs of weakness first. Stones shifted. Gaps appeared. The entire section started leaning inward. Gurmukh Singh's heliograph messages took on desperate urgency. Eastern wall compromised. Expect breach shortly. Ammunition critical. The midday sun turned Saragarhi into an oven. Men in heavy wool uniforms fighting for their lives, sweat poured off them. Water supplies were running low. Ammunition had become critically low. Men were down to their last 30 or 40 rounds. Ishar Singh ordered strict fire discipline. Only shoot when you have a clear target and a clear shot. At approximately 2:00 p.m., 5 hours into the battle, the eastern wall gave way. Not a complete collapse, but a section roughly 10 feet wide simply fell inward. Stone blocks crashed into the courtyard, dust billowed, and through the gap poured tribal warriors. This was the moment the battle transformed from siege to slaughter. Hand-to-hand combat erupted as enemy warriors clambered over rubble into the fort. Sikh defenders, their ammunition exhausted or nearly so, fixed bayonets and met them with steel. The fighting inside Saragarhi's compound was savage beyond description. No room for formations or tactics, just individual combats to the death. A Sikh sepoy held the breach alone for critical minutes, bayonet red with blood, before numbers overwhelmed him. Another defender used his rifle as a club when his ammunition ran out, smashing skulls until his weapon broke and enemy blades found him. Ishar Singh fought like a demon, sword in one hand, pistol in the other, killing enemies who pressed into the compound. The heliograph continued its operation. Gurmukh Singh, from his blockhouse, could see the combat raging in the courtyard below. His messages became a roll call of the dying. Individual names flashed to Fort Lockhart as men fell. Sepoy Ram Singh down. Sepoy Lal Singh down. Each name represented a friend meeting his end. The courtyard filled with enemies despite desperate defense. Bodies of attackers and defenders mixed in the dust. Blood turned the ground to mud. One by one, the Sikh defenders fell. 20 men can't defeat thousands, even in close combat, even with superior training and desperate courage. Each defender took multiple enemies with him before going down. Ishar Singh died somewhere in that chaos. Accounts differ on exactly how he fell. What's certain is that the commander of Saragarhi died with sword in hand, surrounded by enemy dead. By 3:00 p.m., 6 hours into the battle, only one defender remained alive. Sepoy Gurmukh Singh, locked in his heliograph room, continuing to transmit as the door battered under enemy blows. The heliograph blockhouse was the most fortified part of Saragarhi. Thick walls, heavy door, designed to protect the critical communication equipment. Sepoy Gurmukh Singh had watched through his viewing port as his comrades died one by one in the courtyard below. He'd transmitted each name, each casualty, until only he remained. The tribal warriors, having secured the main compound, turned their attention to the last pocket of resistance. Dozens of men threw themselves at the blockhouse door. The heavy wood held, but not forever. Gurmukh Singh continued transmitting. His messages to Fort Lockhart became more personal, more immediate. All others dead. I am under attack. The enemy is everywhere. The standard procedure when a heliograph station was about to be captured was to destroy the equipment and codebooks. Gurmukh Singh set fire to papers and smashed the delicate mirror mechanisms. The flames rose, destroying everything that might be useful to the enemy. But Gurmukh Singh kept the heliograph operational long enough to send his final messages. The Sikh battle cry came through the heliograph. Bole so nihal, Sat Shri Akal. Whoever says this shall be fulfilled, the timeless one is truth. He was telling Fort Lockhart that he was ready to die. His last tactical message was simple. Door breaking. I have only bayonet. The final message from Saragarhi flashed to Fort Lockhart at approximately 3:30 p.m. The enemy is here. Then the heliograph went silent. We can reconstruct what happened next from tribal accounts and physical evidence found later. The door to the blockhouse finally splintered under sustained assault. Tribal warriors poured through, expecting to find a terrified soldier ready to surrender. Instead, they found Sepoy Gurmukh Singh, bayonet fixed, standing in smoke and flames, ready for his last fight. The room was small, perhaps 10 feet by 10 feet. Only a few attackers could engage him at once. Gurmukh Singh killed at least 3 men in that final stand, possibly more. The tribal warriors finally overwhelmed him through sheer numbers. When the heliograph went silent, officers at Fort Lockhart knew what it meant. The garrison of Saragarhi had been annihilated. 21 men had fought to the death against overwhelming odds. Not a single defender surrendered. Not a single man ran. The tribal force occupied the ruins of Saragarhi in late afternoon. Their war cries of victory mixed with the groans of their own wounded. The celebration was muted by the scale of their losses. Bodies carpeted the ground around the fort's walls, piled in heaps where assault waves had been cut down. The casualty count shocked even the tribal commanders. Conservative estimates put enemy dead at between 600 and 1,000 warriors. 21 men had killed or wounded nearly 1,000 enemies before dying themselves. The mathematics of such losses were staggering. For every defender killed, the attackers lost 40 to 50 men. British relief columns moved toward the area within 2 days, but cautiously. When they finally retook the position, they found a scene from hell. Bodies had been lying in the September sun for days. The bodies of the 21 Sikhs were recovered with full military honors, identified and treated with respect. They were buried in a mass grave near the fort they'd defended. News of the Battle of Saragarhi spread across British India within days and reached London within weeks. As details emerged, as the casualty figures were confirmed, as the heliograph transcripts were published, public reaction shifted from mourning to awe. The British Parliament did something unprecedented. All members stood in silence to honor the 21 Sikhs who died at Saragarhi. This was only the 3rd time in Parliament's long history that such honors were given to a non-British fighting force. All 21 defenders were posthumously awarded the Indian Order of Merit, the highest gallantry award available to Indian soldiers in 1897. Military historians began comparing Saragarhi to other famous last stands in history. Thermopylae, where 300 Spartans held a mountain pass. The Alamo, where fewer than 200 defenders held against thousands. Saragarhi now stood alongside these legends. The ratio of defenders to attackers was actually worse at Saragarhi than at Thermopylae or the Alamo. The story spread through the Sikh community worldwide with lightning speed. September 12th was commemorated as Saragarhi Day within months of the battle. Sikh regiments observed it annually, reading the names of the fallen, recounting the battle, recommitting to the martial values the defenders embodied. For Sikhs serving in the British Indian Army, Saragarhi became a standard to live up to, an example that demanded matching courage. Recognition of the exceptional courage displayed at Saragarhi transcended the imperial politics that motivated the battle in the first place. Even tribal Pashtuns, the attackers at Saragarhi, spoke of the battle with a mixture of anger and respect. They'd won, but the cost haunted them. Behind the legend were 21 individual men, each with their own story. Havildar Ishar Singh was probably in his 30s, a veteran by frontier standards. His decision to stand and fight wasn't just military duty, it was personal honor, religious commitment, the acceptance of fate that Sikh philosophy teaches. Sepoy Gurmukh Singh was younger, possibly in his early 20s. His final stand, continuing to transmit even as enemies battered down his door, became the defining image of Saragarhi. Lance Naik Chanda Singh was a veteran of multiple frontier campaigns who'd served for over a decade. The youngest defenders were barely out of training. 18, 19, 20 years old, posted to Saragarhi as their first frontier assignment. They came from Punjab villages, recruited by military officials, promised pay and glory. Family backgrounds were typical for Sikh military recruits. Rural Punjab, farming families, communities where military service was both economic opportunity and cultural tradition. The question that haunts every account of Saragarhi is simple. Why didn't they run? 21 men could have scattered into the mountains, hidden until the tribal force moved on. Some would have survived, yet they chose to stay. All 21. To understand this, you need to understand Sikh martial tradition. The Khalsa warriors were bound by religious and martial codes. Running from battle was worse than death. The Sikh religion teaches eternal optimism, the belief that everything happens according to God's will. Fear of death is seen as lack of faith. A true Sikh warrior should face death in righteous battle because it brings spiritual liberation. These weren't abstract concepts. These were lived beliefs, the framework that shaped their understanding. When Ishar Singh offered them the choice to stay or go, he was really asking if they were true to their faith. Every man answered yes by staying. The Battle of Saragarhi, more than 125 years after it happened, remains relevant in military studies. Military MEs around the world still examine the battle as a case study in defensive operations, small unit tactics, and leadership under impossible circumstances. The tactical analysis focuses on several key aspects: the force multiplication effect of defensive positions, the importance of communication under fire, the morale and leadership factors that kept men fighting for 7 hours, preventing panic, maintaining discipline even as ammunition ran out and walls crumbled. Modern Sikh regiments, particularly the 4th Battalion of the Sikh Regiment in the Indian Army, carry the legacy of Saragarhi forward. September 12th is observed with formal ceremonies, reading of the names, speeches about courage and duty. Saragarhi memorials exist across Punjab with the names of the 21 defenders. Films, books, and cultural works depicting Saragarhi have proliferated in recent years, each interpreting the events through different lenses. Why does this battle matter 125 years later? Because it represents something fundamental about human nature: the capacity for courage in the face of terror, the ability to choose honor over survival, the willingness to die for principles larger than oneself. 21 men, surrounded, outnumbered, doomed, chose to stand together rather than flee separately. They shared ammunition, water, hope, and ultimately death. That kind of brotherhood, that willingness to die alongside your comrades rather than live without them, is the real legacy of Saragarhi. The comparison to modern warfare is obvious. Small defending forces using terrain and defensive positions to offset numerical disadvantages, inflicting disproportionate casualties on attackers. This pattern repeats throughout military history. Saragarhi is one of the purest examples because the numbers were so extreme and the documentation so complete. The final reflection on Saragarhi must acknowledge its contradictions. Courageous men fighting for imperial conquest. Warriors following religious principles while maintaining colonial oppression. These contradictions don't invalidate the courage displayed. They complicate our understanding of it. 21 men fought 10,000. All 21 died. They killed or wounded nearly 1,000 enemies before falling. They maintained communication until the last man died. They never surrendered, never fled, never begged for mercy. These facts are documented beyond historical dispute. The men themselves, Ishar Singh and Gurmukh Singh and Chanda Singh, and the 18 others whose names deserve to be remembered, they made their choice. They chose duty over survival, honor over life, death with dignity over life with shame. That choice, replicated 21 times on a September morning in 1897, created a legend that survives long after the British Empire has crumbled into history. Saragarhi stands as proof that courage is real, that impossible odds can be faced, that brotherhood can transcend death itself. The walls of Saragarhi are gone, destroyed in the battle and abandoned afterward. The heliograph station that transmitted those final messages is dust. But their names survive, their story survives, their courage survives. As long as people tell stories of warriors facing impossible odds, Saragarhi will be remembered. September 12, 1897. 21 men. 10,000 enemies. 7 hours of combat. 1,000 enemy casualties. 0 survivors. We honor them not because they served an empire, but because they honored their oath, not because they died, but because they chose how they would die. The 21 Sikhs at Saragarhi were ordinary men who did something extraordinary. They transformed a forgotten relay station into a memorial to courage that will outlast empires, religions, and the political causes that sent them to their deaths. That is the legacy of Saragarhi. That is why we remember.